I received a phone call. It was the director of Rogue One wants to meet with you. He's in town. So I was like, well, I don't know. Let's go have lunch with him. And when I sat down, he opens his computer and starts showing me stuff and tells me the whole story. And then this character, and then this character. And I was waiting to hear who was going to play that character, you know? And at the end, I realized, oh, he's telling me to play that role? What? This guy must be crazy. Y tu mamá también. The beginning of everything in Y tu mamá también, it was in '99, for me at least. I had a callback. They casted Gael first. I remember that day because it was very special. I mean, we were friends, Gael and I, since kids. Something happened magically on that callback, you know, the chemistry we had. Our friendship was suddenly in front of a camera, and you could see it. You could see the dynamic, that there was history behind, you know. It was the first time I went through a casting session that it was so long, so professional in many ways, you know. Normally you're in a room like this, pretending you have a gun in your hand and you go and you're talking to a dot in front of you. Alfonso did a whole kind of like a half day of shooting a film. We were in a hotel, in a room, shooting it from different angles, then we shot in the car. They edited that, and that's how they decided we were going to be Los Charolastras. I have a friend that is Tenoch. You know, I know Tenoch, basically, and I just had to think about him. I grew up really close to him, so I had him as a reference. What I remember is I didn't want the film to end. I remember we had a break for a week, a holiday. They were going to do like B-roll stuff and like second unit stuff. I stayed pretending I was assisting Alfonso, and Gael was pretending he was assisting El Chivo, the DP. That was a good example of how happy we were and how much we cared about this film. We wanted to be part of everything, you know. And also because we were kind of like living the journey the characters were living. We had to get to the beach. We obviously party crazily the first weekend on the beach, and stories like the one that happens to these two friends happened to the whole crew. It was like we were all charolastras through the process. There's a scene where Tenoch is watching TV and the phone is ringing. And the woman that works in the house of Tenoch, she comes with a sandwich. She goes all the way up, she gets to him, gives him the sandwich, and then answers the phone. And it's for him, and just passes the phone to him, and he doesn't move. That woman is Libo, who worked in Alfonso's house forever. And Roma is dedicated to Libo. We were talking about the Mexico we grew up in. We were talking about the contradictions of the country we love, the class issues that we had to deal with our whole lives, you know. The film is very personal in many ways. Dirty Dancing, Havana Nights. I'm not a great dancer, and I went to Puerto Rico for like 2 months and a half. I had to train there, and it was amazing to see what they were capable of doing, and I felt like I was a joke compared to anyone in Puerto Rico. But gladly, in film, you can lie a lot. And also, I try not to do it anymore, because then you'll see that it's all a trick, you know. So now I cannot even dance, not even when I want to, because people is expecting something that I'm not. But I had fun, I have to say, in the whole process. It was really cool, the amount of time we dedicated to just dancing. And obviously dancing in Puerto Rico means going out at night. So it was great to be able to go party and say you were working. I was in a beautiful place for many months. I can't complain. At the terminal, I got a call from my agent, and I go like, really? You're asking me? I mean, as if I was gonna say, no, I don't think so. Who's that director? It was a beautiful thing to realize that he watched Y tu mamá también, because that was the message I got. I saw you in Y tu mamá también, and I really want to work with you, and I wrote this for you, kind of thing. And when he says that, it just happens. He has like that kind of magical touch where whatever he wants to do, he can. From my perspective, I was in front of someone that has complete freedom. I come from an industry that When you have an idea, normally tells you, no, that's impossible, and you have to find another way. Here is the opposite. What do you want to see? And that's what you get to see. I was suddenly on this set that is at the airport. Everything worked. The food court worked as a food court. You could go and sit down and eat there, and the place for pizza actually was doing pizza. The bookstore had tons of books, and it was a bookstore. On a set with Spielberg, you feel that, complete freedom. He said to me once, "You like football?" And he suddenly organized a scene where I was playing football against the national team of Brazil. And he had that idea, and that happened. And the prejudice I had for that thing called Hollywood, that is a monster and it's wanting to consume, suddenly I realized it wasn't. There's many Hollywoods, and there's one that I can learn a lot from, So it was fantastic. Frida, playing this story, not just the character, but the story. I live in Coyoacán. Still today, I'm really close to the studio of Diego Rivera, the one with the bridge. The house of Frida and her family is blocks away from my father's. The Mexico my father grew up in was basically that Mexico that the film talks about. So yes, it's a story that I've heard my whole life and that matters to me. It was definitely my work in Y Tu Mamá También what got me close to Julie Taymor and Salma. And I remember I did a casting session in Mexico, and I never thought I was gonna get it. And I did, and it was amazing because I come from the world of theater. My father is a set designer, and I connected with Julie Taymor instantly. And I think it's a lot because of that, because our love for theater and the way she approaches like a set.
Hello, ugly. They're beautiful.
I met Salma before, and we had many friends in common and everything. But obviously, the Y Tu Mamá También, something happens, right? If you see a film where two young kids are masturbating, thinking of you, that's like a compliment, I guess. Definitely, it was something we laughed about so many times. Casa de mi padre. We wish Mexico was doing more comedy like the one that gets done in the States. We don't. I don't know what's the issue, but most of the comedy in Mexico, we call it the pastelazo, like a cake is thrown in your face and you're like, oh, and people laugh. But this comedy that has an edge, we don't have much of that. When we got the call, I was talking to Gael. We were so excited because who doesn't want to do comedy like Will does, It's a gift to make people laugh. It must be a beautiful feeling to have that capacity. And again, it was a way to make a comment also on something that mattered to us. All this violence and the war on drugs on a film that was going to be seen in both sides of the border. And as actors, just to be there and have fun. I remember the first day, I couldn't stop laughing. It was delicious just to be able to go further and further and further. If you see something funny and then you have an idea, you put it out there, and it's not this thing of like, this is my joke and this is your joke. And no, if comedy happens, it's because everyone is open to let the other one be funny.
¿Estás en el negocio de las drogas?
Hombre, tengo mis negocios en México, Armando. ¿Qué más te da a ti?
Raúl, tú has traído la desgracia a nuestra familia.
No. Yo vine aquí a salvar a nuestra familia. Es distinto.
Estás llevando a esta familia al infierno.
I just suffered a lot for Will because he had to speak in Spanish through the whole film, and he didn't speak Spanish before. So it was like when I did my first film in English, It's painful. It's a horrible feeling. You're just like worry about the words all day long. So he would sit down and he was like seeing a method actor, in his world, in his bubble. And we were having so much fun around him. Mr. Lonely. It was a very important experience for me because I had to become Mr. Lonely. And with Harmony, he was putting everything together so we could actually explore being the characters. You were even allowed to stay in the house, in the set, if you wanted it. We decided I had to stay by myself, obviously, because I was playing Mr. Lonely. There was a pub and had a few rooms on top. and I had the one on the top, and I was far from everyone else. No one was staying there. Harmony stayed there for a week, and he decided to move because he hated it. That bad it was. It was interesting for me for many reasons. First of all, my grandfather is from Scotland, and half of my family lives in England. My mom was British, so I somehow reconnected with that part of my life. Harmony showed me that to be a director, you can come from anywhere. One day on set, I arrive and he has his earphones on and he says, look, listen to this. And it's the weirdest thing ever. Someone like shouting. It's like someone going through extreme pain and a horrible sound. And I go like, whoa, okay, that's cool. And he says like, I want people to feel what you felt when they see this scene. Let's do it. And I go like, okay, all right. How does that translate to this moment where I'm playing ping pong with Charles Chaplin? But it works. Somehow it works. I remember, because I had to learn these moves, right? So I went out of the Georges Pompidou Museum with a character on and started dancing in the street. I made 20 euros in like an hour or two. But then there was this little kid that stayed there a little too long. And he realized I just had 1 minute of moves. And then I repeated it and repeated it and repeated it. And he started telling everyone, like, oh no, he's a joke. He just knows how, look, put more money. He doesn't have another move. And I was like, you. And then the other performers came to me saying, hey, what are you doing here? And suddenly I realized there was a mafia and that I didn't belong. I had to give my money to someone else that was doing some show there. And I said, no, I'm not doing this for the money, sorry. And I left. It was a very interesting challenge to play an impersonator of Michael Jackson. And while playing an impersonator, it's impossible not to reflect on who you are as an actor. I remember the World Cup was happening and all my friends were in Germany, following Mexico and having the most fun. And I remember watching the games in the pub when I was there by myself, looking like Michael Jackson, watching the World Cup alone. It was, it was intense. The Book of Life. What I did a few times in Mexico is when the films come to Mexico or Latin America, they do a version for Latin America in Spanish. They would hire me, so you would become the role in Spanish. Things come already animated, right? So you have to make a way to fit in the lip sync of someone speaking in English. And everything is animated for someone speaking in English, and you're not part of the process of the design of the character. So when I did Book of Life, I felt so much freedom, you know? This idea of being recorded, not just the audio, but your face. They have 2 video cameras on you when you're recording, and then when they animate, they are seeing you, how your face moves and what are you doing. So then the acting becomes really important, and it happens there in a room in front of the director.
No retreat.
No retreat?
No surrender!
We're gonna do it now!
I was introduced to Jorge by Guillermo del Toro. I arrived to the place where they were going to show me all the concept drawings, and he was going to tell me the story, and Guillermo makes me sit in the first row. By then I was already in the project, like Guillermo has that power on me. When he says, come here, I go like, yes, I end up there, no matter what. But he said to me, like, you're going to hear this guy. He's a genius. If he says he's a genius, I cannot go like, well, no, I don't think so, Guillermo. You have a lot to learn. And Guillermo made Jorge listen to that. So he made Jorge very, very nervous. And Jorge was looking at me like, holy crap, now I have to be a genius. But then the meeting went great, and he started explaining, and you could realize he had thought about this story for years and years. And Jorge got all the freedom he needed because Guillermo was there. And I loved the film for many reasons. I worked with Gustavo Santolaya. If I'm a bad dancer, I'm a worst singer. And I sang 7 songs. He made it work in his studio, and I spent weeks working for that.
I know I belong when I sing this song.
And then it was the first thing I could actually share with my kids. I brought my daughter and my son to the recording session. It's a beautiful thing to see that they can actually experience something that has to do with my work. Rogue One, a Star Wars story. The first time I received a phone call, it was the director of Rogue One wants to meet with you. He's in town. And I was like, well, okay. I mean, he might want like directions to get to the beach of Y Tu Mamá También or something. And when I sat down, he said like, I want to do this film with you, but you can't tell anyone. No one can know. It's like I teach my kids never to trust people that start like that, right? You can't tell anyone this. It's like they don't tell me. Rogue One is a film about when there's no Jedis and the people have to take control. The people have to come out and fight. So for him, he said, like, we cannot represent that if we see the people we always see in the movies. If you're big, if you're blonde, if you have blue eyes, if you're strong, you're probably gonna save the world. But if you see the guy from Y Tu Mamá También, he's not gonna save the world. He's probably there to help someone save the world. So in this case, they're gonna be the ones saving the galaxy. And I love that idea. He went for his favorite films, tiny films where he saw Felicity or my work. It's a cast you would never imagine on a Star Wars film. And also it's a homage to the genesis of Star Wars, of the way they shot in the 70s. It felt like theater. They constructed every set. The stuff works. If you sit down and you start piloting, you push things and things happen. It's like a dream, you know, for a Star Wars fan. Narcos Mexico. It's not TV. You cannot say TV because it's not TV anymore. It reminds me what happens in theater in terms of the time you have to understand who you're playing. To a point where it's almost painful when you have to play a drug dealer. You want to just get the character out of you and go somewhere else. And you can't, right? Because it's 7 months of shooting this. To see your character actually transform is something amazing. For a Mexican audience, there's no spoilers, right? It's impossible to spoil it. But in the States, it's different. Because this character I'm playing, Miguel Ángel Félix Gallardo, he was a very discreet man. He understood the power of discretion, the power of being under the radar. It's really difficult to find stuff where you can see the way he talks or moves. There's obviously pictures and a few interviews, but not from the first years. And the story is getting really close to the present, to the world you and I live in. I go back to Mexico and so many of those politicians are still in power somehow. It can't be true, like how easy we forget. So I think the show is important because it's creating a debate that needs to be happening.
Yo aquí, ando construyendo un imperio.
As an actor, to be honest, if I'm going to join a project, it's because I need to feel a very strong connection with the story. I need to understand the point of view. So whoever is the lead, the director, I have to understand why they want to tell the story. And more since I started directing, I realized being an actor is being a tool for someone else's point of view. And you have to be humble enough to be there to give anything it's needed from you so that person can tell the story they want to tell.